Today we're gonna remake Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter, and it's gonna sound like this. Alright guys, my name is badhabit. Today we're gonna break down and remake Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter, my favorite song of 2024 so far. And I knew it was gonna be a hit. On April 18th, I posted this story right here. I was feeling it inside. For some reason, I knew this song was gonna be a hit. But the question is, why? What's making this song so special? And even though the production sounds simple, I can assure you, it's not. The song has been produced by Julian Bunetta, an amazing producer, amazing songwriter. He did all of the major stuff from One Direction, and in this one we have so many hidden layers, so many little techniques that Julian used to make the song stand out, and today we're gonna go through all of them so you can use them too in your own productions, so you can upgrade them from average to pro. So I want to start from the drums because the song has a very nice groove that consists basically of drums, guitars, and bass. But to get that groove, I want to play guitars and bass when I already have good sounding drums. So we're gonna have to make some disco-ish drums. This song kind of reminds me a little bit of Doja Cat's Kiss Me More, Say So, that kind of sound. So I want to start from these Oliver packs and see if we can find some loops that maybe we can use, or maybe we can just chop up and use some samples from them. This is cool, but I need something simple, like 8 notes. This is very cool. I like the snare of this one, but especially the kick. So if you've been following the channel, you probably know already that I like to use this filter inside the simpler just to, apply some drive. That's a little bit too intense now. Something like that. And I'm pretty happy with this kick. The only thing is that it doesn't have a lot of low end. So I might add one plugin that I really like to use on kicks, which is the SSL channel strip. And I'm not going to use the UAD one this time. I'm going to use this one just to show you like another great alternative. A little bit of compression, which is probably going to reduce the low end of the kick even more. Don't worry, because we're going to make up for it with this. Yeah. There we go. We can move on to the snare. The snare is probably gonna be a little bit tougher. It sounds to me like it's a layer of multiple things. I can definitely hear a little bit of clap, not only like a solid snare, but the note of the snare is very, very well defined. There are some very cool sounds in here, but I might wanna layer it myself, Most of these sounds that you're gonna find in the Oliver packs are already layers of like multiple snares and claps. But this time I might wanna do it myself. But none of these have like a solid note. I need like something like that. What about this one? You can definitely hear that note like that. That's the note. Yeah, I found this one. Okay. I want to make this one a little bit more like this. So a similar shape. Short, tight. I want to give this loop a little bit of real feeling, and I like having some samples taken from loops like these. Oh yeah. Without it, wow, this clap is amazing. Let me see if we can find like a clap that sounds a little bit more real. This is pretty cool. This could be it. Something like that, maybe. Doesn't really make a big difference, to be honest. I was expecting something different. The first one of this loop is very nice. Oh yeah. Okay, so I adjusted all the fades and I layered them in a way that I like how they're flamming. Okay, and so now they sound like this. Yeah. The only thing missing now with this snare is a little bit of tail. So I think I'm gonna add a very small reverb. That's nice. But I'm wondering maybe a gated reverb could really do the job here to make it stand out a little bit more, have a little bit more of that 80s feeling on the snare. Not Phil Collins, not that much, but so without it, with it, wow, I like it. A little bit more pre-delay on the longer reverb, so it doesn't start playing right away, but we have like the snare, which sounds a little bit drier, and then after like 30-40 milliseconds, the longer reverb kicks in. I think I like this. Wow. Okay, so these are the two main elements of our drums, and I'm super happy about how they're sounding. They sound disco, but they also sound modern enough to like really have that punch that we need in nowadays music. One thing I want to do is for this one, the first that we picked, I want to enhance the attack a little bit more, not much, like 12%, 13%. Now we're also gonna reduce the sustain a little bit to make it really tight. I'm gonna go a little bit stronger here. Okay, cool. And one more thing I want to do on this one is enhance that note, 2 dB, something like that. So this is without it, this is with it. And I did something very similar on this layer right here by enhancing this area. And I also tamed a little bit the high end. I shaped this layer as well. I just used, a different transient shaper. This is the one that you always see me use, but this time I felt like using this one, nothing special, just increase the attack, decrease the sustain. There's actually a substantial difference in this layer. This is before. This is after. I wanted to focus a little bit more on that initial part of the sample, not much on the tail. Okay, so this was the easy part. Now we gotta make sure that the groove is on point. And to make sure the groove is on point, we really gotta pay attention to how we move these hats. So the hats to me sound mostly like acoustic hats. We can definitely find some cool acoustic samples here and maybe play them in to make sure we have the right feeling. I feel like the groove is an essential part of this song. It really makes it move with that bass line, the guitar riff, and the drums. To me, these hats sounds pretty soft, like they've been played with brushes. I have these folders of vintage drum machines. Look at this, like there's so many hi-hats, jazz, we have folk, we have brush. That's what I was looking for. Okay, so I picked the ones that I was actually showing you. I have this one, this one. This is a little bit more open. I'm not sure I'm gonna use this one, but definitely a combination of these three. The pattern that we need here is very, very simple. It's like 8 notes, something like that. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to adjust the timing of these, but what I did is basically, I used this one, the very short one, to have this simple 8 notes pattern. And then I added this one just on the upbeat, which now I have to like kind of quantize. I don't want to quantize it perfectly, but I need to make sure they sound well together. And then I use this one, which is a little bit more open compared to this one. And I put it only on the 4th. So I put it on the kick and the snare. So what happens is this. So you have that 8th note feeling. But like I'm doing now with my mouth, every quarter, you have the hi-hat a little bit more open. Something like that, okay? So I did some adjustments to the velocities and also to the timing. As you can see, it's not perfect, like at all. But as long as it sounds good to my ears and the groove is there, I'm happy with it. And this sounds good to me. Like they don't sound late, they don't sound early, which is the most important thing for me. Okay, so this is sounding really cool. The groove is there. Like I really love the sound selection, but anytime that I make my own drums from scratch, like I just did now, I also like to add 1 or 2 additional loops. If they're live loops, even better, because they give that live feeling, the live feeling that I'm already trying to give to these drums that I made. For example, with the velocities, with the timing of these samples not being exactly on the grid. Well, I want to enhance that feeling. And so that's when I introduce loops, not from the very beginning. Now at this stage to just, enhance the feeling that I already have. I have a very interesting folder right here that I like to take from, Okay, so these are the 4 loops that I selected. If I play them together, they sound like this. It's basically like a full loop, and that's not what I want. I want to keep the feeling of these loops, but just as a support. One thing that I like to do sometimes to experiment with these loops is add this very cool free plugin. Just make sure to check the video I made about my top 5 plugins in 2024, because I included this one. I use it all the time. This is free, and it's very cool to like shape the sounds in a way that's a little bit different than just, pitching up and down. I want to clean up a little bit the top end, but I don't want to EQ it for now. I just want to shape the sound in a different way. And one thing I want to do is also make sure that these transients are not as loud. And I can do it with LFO tool, doing something like that. For this one, a little bit more work, but basically the same thing we did for the first one. And then I used this plugin, this wow control. I found a pretty cool preset called Grungy. This makes it, I don't know, well-rounded. Now they sound like this, and they're a very, very cool addition to what we had already. This, you know, gives more life to the drums that we had in the beginning. Without it, the groove was already pretty cool. This brings it to another level. Okay, so I'm very, very happy about the drums that we have now. I'm ready to move on to the bass. No, we're not done with the drums, I know, but like this is the bulk of the drums. This is what we need to move on to the bass. And the bass is probably one of my favorite sounds of the song because you cannot really tell what it is. Like, is it a real bass, electric bass, a synth bass? What is it? Is it a layer, a combination of all of these? Possibly yes. And that's why it's probably my favorite sound of the song. Actually not. My favorite sound of the song is that super cool lead. You know what I'm talking about, right? The one that goes... That's an insane sound. The first time I heard the song, I was like, what is this sound? We're gonna remake that later in the video, so stay tuned for that. But for the bass, it kind of reminds me, like I said in the beginning, of Kiss Me More. And I know for a fact that in that song, they used the sample of a real bass. So basically, they found a loop like this one of an electric bass, a real bass, and then they sampled a single note from this loop and they made the bass line out of that. All of these notes repeated, we can just sample one of these. Something like that. Maybe this one is better though. Yeah, okay. We probably need to make it a little bit dirty. The capitator is always the plugin that I'd like to use first when I need a little bit of grittiness on top of the bass. Yeah. And to stay in this world of real bass but sampled, I can go for some plugins like Korg, Triton, the M1. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh wow. You know, you have that feeling of a real bass, but if you listen carefully, you know it's not real. It's not played live. Found this one, it's not in the right octave, but this sound is quite interesting because it kind of reminds me of an upright bass. I think I'm gonna keep this and then we're gonna create a new track and find the sub bass. This sound right here, I've used it before as a sub bass and I like it because it's not a pure sine wave. It has some more like harmonics. Low pass it a little bit. We might just need to add a little bit of like saturation, distortion, and maybe compression to this group. Because, you know, when I put a lot of layers together, I like to have them compressed together so they sound like one thing. I'm gonna start with some distortion, saturation. We used the capitator already. Let's go for the other Sound Toys David Lock. If you just keep it very low in the mix, it adds some texture to the sound, some like grittiness. I've had it for years, but I've never used it really because I didn't know how to use it. Now I'm using it very lightly whenever I want to add some grittiness to the sound. Let me show you how. So let's decrease the mix. That's what I want, but not as much. So maybe, 3 without it. Wow. But now I want to make it a little bit darker with this knob. All right, maybe 10. Very controlled distortion. That's what I like. I love this. Oh, wow. I just want to play those guitars so bad now. And I'm almost ready to play those guitars. But first, let me make an actual espresso. Let's go make some actual coffee. All right. There we go. You can smell it from the camera. Wow, this is good. I'm ready now. Okay, so we're gonna start from the main guitar riff, the riff that you hear throughout the whole song, the thing that actually you remember. If you try to sing the melody on top of these chords that I just played on the guitar doesn't make a lot of sense. And probably you're wondering, okay, but why? This is one of the most interesting techniques that Julian Bunetta used while producing this song. The guitar does something, the keys are doing something else, and then there are more guitars. The other guitars are playing different voicings. So the harmony of the song is made of multiple instruments doing different things, but complementing each other in a very interesting way. And that's a very cool technique that you can use too in your own productions. First of all, let's try to get a good take of this. Ah, come on, the timing. Let's go. Perché ogni volta che non registro vado a tempo, poi quando devo registrare... Okay, so I recorded a bunch of takes. As you can see, I did 19, and then I selected the best parts, and I put together a pretty good comp, I think. I wish I could show you the full process, how I got to this result, but you know, there's no time to do this in this YouTube video. But if you're interested in my full process, like no gatekeeping at all, make sure to check my masterclass link down in the description. It's over 10 hours long. Like you can see my full process from start to finish. But for now, this is the final result. This is what I got. Now we're starting to actually hear the song. Very cool. Before I process these guitars to make them sound better, I actually want to record a couple more layers. But these guitars are going to be a little bit different because instead of a riff, this time we're going to strum. So I can have a very cool combination of chords here. I can, for example, have one track playing this. Okay, and then I can have, for example, another one playing this. You know, these are all different voicings, so when we put them together, it's gonna sound amazing. And there's also one more guitar layer that goes like this. Okay, so let me show you what I did because I think this is very cool. The main thing about these guitars was just finding a good balance between them and finding different sounds for each layer. I created two groups, one which I kept cleaner in terms of like sound, and one that instead I treated a little bit differently, adding a shimmer. Two layers, one left and one right. These are doing the exact same thing. And then I have the little thing that I showed you before, that little melody. And then on the group, I just put a little bit of LFO tool to like, you know, add some sidechain. But this is the interesting part, the shimmer, which creates this effect. You know? Hear how like the pad is coming out of these guitars. So basically, this is enriching the chords so nicely. For the other layer, it's a little bit simpler. Instead, I just chose different sounds and did different things with the voicings. And then I have another one panned slightly to the right because this was panned slightly to the left. Darker, a little bit more like distorted. So if I just play you these two groups together, basically you have the harmony of the song. Yeah. And let's add the other guitar. The sound of the riff is not quite there. Control the peaks a little. One thing I'm gonna add is soothe. This is a lifesaver with guitars. I just want a little bit of reverb. I think I'm gonna put it before soothe in parallel. And I also want some delay. Some surgical EQ here. Without it, it was sounding like this. And now it has more body because I enhanced all of these frequencies. And also I wanted to make sure that the top note was the one that I was hearing better. So that's the reason for this crazy EQ right here and for this one right here. And actually remove a little bit of this. So we talked about the guitars playing these different voicings to like make the chords richer. But the same thing is also happening with the keys. One thing that I can definitely hear is like a CP70, that kind of electric piano. To my ears, this is what they're playing, like an A minor, okay? And then basically this chord, which would be G, B, D, E. Just not sure of this preset. This is more like it. Okay, this is the classic CP70 sound, you know? Oh yeah. Very cool. And to support this piano, I think they also added a little synth, something that could be, I don't know, like a Juno, a Jupiter. Let's go for the Jupiter, just for once. I like this. It's kind of wobbling, you know? It's kind of... so much better. So this is what the piano is doing in the hook. These are the voicings for the hook. We don't have the piano in the verse. It's coming back in the pre, but it's doing something slightly different that we're gonna see in a second. But before moving on to that, I wanna finish the hook. We need those bells that are playing the main melody. This sound could work if we play it in 2 octaves at the same time. Let's go, I like it. And maybe a little bit of chorus. Okay, so this is basically it for the hook. We have the keys, we have the guitars, we have drums, we have the bass. And when we go into the verse, most of these things simplify a little bit. So we can just take all of this, duplicate it, and going into the verse, we have the same drums, the same bass, and the guitar now is a little bit filtered, you know, to make room for the vocals. But then going into the pre, we have those strumming guitars that are coming back. And this starts to build, you know, the vibe for the chorus. And one thing that's changing a little bit is this piano. In the pre, it's coming back, playing slightly different voicings again. Yeah! Okay guys, I just noticed a layer that I've never noticed before. Like I listened to this song like 1,000 times to really, you know, hear everything, but I missed this one thing. I think there's some sort of like keys that are playing in the verse, going through some plugins that make it glitch, like bad reception. You know when you're like on hold because you're calling the DMV or something like that, and they put the music, you know, but you know there's bad reception. That's what I'm hearing. Okay, I found this sound, which could be a good starting point. So from this, if I'm thinking of something glitching, 2 plugins come to mind. The first one is definitely Lossy, and the other one is this one right here, Lo-Fi. It's already making it sound lo-fi, and maybe with Lossy we can really bring it to the next level. Let me see. Bad Cell Connection. Okay, maybe this one? Yeah, this one. This is the one I'm looking for. I also want some micro shift to make the stereo bigger, and now we're gonna filter it. Yeah! Woo! Okay guys, we're almost there, but we're missing the coolest sound of the whole song, which is that lead sound. We're gonna do that in a second, but first of all, I gotta reorganize this session because this is a mess. I really don't know what's happening here. Okay, I reorganized the session, and while doing that, I also added a couple of layers that I wanna show you real quick. In the hook, we also needed a shaker to define a little bit better some of the accents. So what I did was simply take in a couple of shaker loops. You can see I chopped them up, and I made sure that the accents were in the right spots. You've probably noticed that there's also a crash, pretty simple, nothing crazy. A little percussion, like this is a wood block. And then there's a tom fill that used the transition from one section to another. I just found a cool tom sample, put it in a sampler so I could, you know, tune it. What else? I just added a couple of open hi-hats. This is a very simple 808 hat. And here, like a more acoustic hat. But now that we have the full arrangement of the song, we can add a couple of things that are missing. I want to add a little bass that only appears in the beginning of verse 2 going into the pre. It's just a different bass line and it's a different sound. To me, it sounds like a synth bass. Yeah. I needed some distortion, and so I used this very cool plugin, some very short chorus, and this plugin, the DBX 160, to add a little bit of transient. So now, oh wow, we're ready for that. We're ready for the lead sound. And this lead sounds like a Prophet to me, probably. So possibly repro again, but I don't know. I don't want to go for repro. I think this time I'm gonna try to find a similar sound, I don't know, in the mini moog. This is already pretty close, and it's the first sound. I don't want the delay here, but maybe the chorus. Oh wow, I love this. Oh my god, this sound is insane. I need to add some like distortion to this. Oh wow, more distortion. Whoa, amazing. It's almost perfect, but there's one crucial part of this sound that we need to make right. There's a little bit of vibrato, a little bit of modulation, especially on the last note, and we don't have any at the moment. We need to add it with the modulation wheel and the keyboard. On the last note, I'm gonna really boost it up, so it's gonna sound something like that. Yeah! The final thing that I always like to keep for the end is the drum processing, and as always I start from this one, dial it in little by little. This is pretty intense, but let me dial it back a little. Less drive. And lately I've been using this more and more. I don't want to do anything crazy. And to finish, just a little bit of EQing. I just want to boost a little bit the very low end, like the kick, mostly the kick. And there we have it. There we have it. Alright guys, we got to the end of another amazing remake. This is my favorite song of 2024, and I think it came out insane. We were able to really break it down in every single detail. I love this one, and I hope you enjoyed it too. I hope it was helpful and that you learned something. So a lot of you guys are asking me to make these remakes downloadable, drop the stems, drop the samples, and for now I can just let you know that something is coming. So if you haven't subscribed already, make sure to subscribe right now, and this way you're not gonna miss it when it's time. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. If you have any song requests for the future, let me know in the comments. Make sure to drop a like on the video, and I'll see you on the next one.